Welcome to the 17th podcast. I'm your host, Mike Schumann, and I'm thrilled to have as a guest today none other than the great Dane Fife. Mr. Fife, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Mike. Appreciate you having me on.
I really appreciate you joining. I got to ask you, we're deep into the throes of football season here. What's the read on the Detroit Lions this year?
I think the Lions are doing okay. They took one on the chin the other night, um, but I think when you don't participate in the preseason, uh, someone like Goff, who's as old, he's getting up there in age. He's showing a little rust. First two games, they're looking rusty. Is really what I could say. They just look rusty, but I think they'll get it going if they can stay healthy.
I'm not too thrilled about the fact that they cut Nate Sudfeld there. I think Indiana fans might be a little bit
I
bitter
know.
towards your Lions.
I'm a little bitter. They gave Sudfeld pretty good amount of minutes. It looked like to me in their preseason games. I was disappointed too, Mike. Sudfeld, he's a Hoosier man, and he was,
Right.
I guess, in our minds, deserving of a roster spot.
We're always a little bit biased about that. But speaking of football quarterbacks, I think a lot of people know Dane Fife was once a star quarterback at Clarkston High School. What was the scouting report on Dane Fife?
Yeah, man. Yeah. I think I was a little overrated, to be honest with you. I was riding the coattails of my brother, who probably was my brother Dugan, my oldest brother. He had a better arm. He had better feet. He was he's just a better QB. So I think really I was overrated. I had a decent arm. I was fairly accurate. I would probably describe myself as a very, very poor man's John Elway, who was really good. I could scramble. I was a backyard football QB. So I think that's what I was best at. When Nick Saban recruited me at Michigan State, he just told me I was a winner. Um, I don't know if that made me feel good. I think it did, but he never said I was a good quarterback. Lloyd Carr recruited me at Michigan. He said he felt like I needed to be in a Michigan uniform, obviously to play QB. But they had some really good QBs at the time: Drew Henson, Tom Brady. I think Brian Greasy might have still been there. So I don't know. It's hard to say how good I was. I wasn't really quick. Didn't have a great arm. Was just good at improvising and making plays, I guess.
When it's this time of year and you're watching football at home, do you ever think about what might have been if you had stuck with it?
Absolutely. Football's my first love. And I don't know. I just gravitate towards watching any game that I can, probably even more than basketball. But I find myself watching high school football, pro football, arena football. We got the Michigan Panthers, and any sport that's close to something like football. Like I guess I don't know if it's very close, but I've been watching like professional tag events on ESPN Plus or ESPN2, whatever it is. But anything that involves something that's close to football, involving that kind of contact, the seek and destroy aspect is exciting for me.
Speaking of football, or to continue with it, I guess, have you paid any attention to IU so far this year? What are your impressions of Kurt Signetti?
Oh, I can't wait for his halftime talks. A little underwhelming at this point as far as Coach Sig's halftime talks go with the reporter, but I'm really excited about what Coach Sig has going. Certainly looked good in their first couple of games, first three games. Really impressed with how they went to the Rose Bowl. I'm a little jealous. Maybe would have liked to gone to the Rose Bowl, but I'm just impressed with kind of how they do the little things. Coach Sig, it was a big deal about Coach Sig telling his players to just chill out after they score a touchdown or do something
Right.
well. I've been impressed with that. I've been impressed with Indiana's discipline and how Coach Sig handles things like penalties, unnecessary penalties. I've just really enjoyed the overall. I guess the feeling you get that Indiana football has a really good coach, and I give Scott Dolson a lot of credit for going out and finding a very good football coach.
Yeah, he obviously comes from the Nick Saban tree of coaches. It sounds like you got to know Coach Saban at least a little bit when you were younger. Do you see any parallels there?
I'm not sure. I did get to know Nick Saban. I'm not sure he would remember me, but I guess um, the thing I do see is the players are going to focus on the smaller details. You get like I said on TV the other night. You see Coach Sig get he's disappointed in one. I guess we could seemingly call it, well, it's just one penalty, but
Right.
I think the way Sig and staff see it, it is a big deal. And that's something I can really respect. And you worry about it rubbing the players the wrong way. Well, I don't think so. I think parents see that, fans see that, and it's seems like a change to me. Something. Oh, okay. Let's see where this is going to go. And if you can get enough buy-in from the players, you got something really going relative to a strong, disciplined program.
Yeah, something that it's probably the case that parents that you want to have in your program, players that you want to have in your program, probably aren't rubbed wrong by that kind of stuff. And that
Right.
reminds
And
that
if you
that
get
kind
a,
of
go ahead.
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just saying, if you get enough buy-in, um, you know the older players, that's what you expect. Harder in today's day and age, but you get enough buy-in, you don't have to manage as much as a coach because it spills into your other things, spills into off the field stuff like your academics, your discipline in your social life. Um, that's something that I experienced at Michigan State that really worked well for us.
You just gave me the perfect segue. I was going to ask you about Coach Izzo. Do you keep in touch with him?
Absolutely. I go up there a couple times a year, just really on my own, and then I've been doing some college basketball games, color commentating, so have a chance to connect with them then. But yeah, anything I ever need, anytime myself or he wants to talk, we keep in touch quite a bit. Yep.
Yeah, I saw, in the last few years, like Coach K, Coach Bayheim, Jay Wright have all stepped away from the game. If you had
Yeah.
asked me for a prediction, I would have said Coach Izzo would have been one of those guys just because of everything that's changed in the last few years. But he's sticking it out. How do you think he's adapting to everything that's changed?
I don't think he's adapting very well. That said, he's adapted enough to want to continue to do it. I think what drives Coach Izzo is his love and passion, one for Michigan State, the university, the town, the community. I mean, he just absolutely loves that aspect of coaching so much, and then it spills into you get into really helping kids, helping families. That's just something that's going to be really hard for Coach Izzo to let go of. I don't think it's an ego thing. I do think it's a drive to win another championship, but I don't
Right.
think it's ego as much as it is just his passion. I mean, that's his life. It really is. Besides his family, that is his absolute life. He doesn't have other hobbies. He doesn't like to do other things. Michigan State and Michigan State basketball and that community is his life, and I think he'll do it as long as he absolutely can.
And part of what's changed in the last couple of years is roster construction, with NIL, with the transfer portal. From your perspective, where are we at with that? Like what do you think is ideal from a roster construction standpoint? How important is high school recruiting still? How do you navigate the transfer portal? Where do you think we are with all that?
Well, you've got coaches who are used to culture and really don't want to see that go, and I think that's coaches like Matt Painter and
Right.
Tom Izzo, Greg Gard, um, coaches like that are trying to maintain some semblance of culture because there's such a value in that. Um, and I think it's going to be hard to let go, but it's going to get those guys too. It's going to get them where they just can't keep up with kids coming and going before their junior and senior year. I guess what I mean by that is the transfer epidemic is going to hit all programs at some
Right.
point, and so at some point you're going to see, unless things change, relative to legislature, you're going to see 8, 9, 10 players, as many as 8, 9, and 10 players in roster turnover every year, regardless of graduation. So you asked about high school. I still think high school, recruiting high school matters, because if it doesn't help a program in the immediate future with a incoming freshman, it'll help them when that freshman most likely decides to transfer, and it'll help them on the return. So you want to still develop those relationships and keep the relationships with both high school recruits and high school youth coaches. So you want to keep those relationships. But I also think you're going to see every program, unless, like I said, unless rules change, you're going to see every program vying for the most experienced player from here on out. I mean, every single year, you're going to see the top programs trying to acquire, and key word there, acquire the best and most experienced players, the juniors, the seniors, the players that have been through the battles. Roster construction. Like I said, I think the goal would just be every year to just ultimately keep the players you want, tell the other players that aren't good enough to beat it, and go out and acquire some new players.
Yeah, that is one of the fascinating things about this era is, that transfer portal door certainly swings both ways, doesn't it?
It sure does.
I,
It's
I
it's one of the reasons that keeps me out of it. No question. I do not wake up and get excited about that aspect every day. Just worrying about who's getting paid enough and who's looking over their shoulder to see if there's something better. I was talking to a Power 5 coach the other day, and I said, "How you doing?" He's like, "I miss coaching." Like, what? He's like, "Well, you just don't get to coach anymore."
right.
Before it was like 10%. The college job was 10% coaching. Now it's virtually 1 to 0% basketball.
Crazy, crazy. I promise this for Indiana listeners. This isn't a Michigan-based podcast, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Dusty May taking over at Michigan. I know he's a friend of yours. I know the Michigan Ann Arbor is. Your family has a lot of ties to Ann Arbor. How do you think he's going to do?
I think Dusty's going to do very well. If all things were even, um, no portal, no NIL, I think Dusty'd come in and be one of the best coaches in the Big Ten. That said, it's going to take time to get things in place that Dusty wants to put place, and that's basketball speaking. There's strength and conditioning. There is, relationships that he has to build within the athletic department. That takes time, but the biggest factor, of course, comes down to, can you acquire the amount of talent that you need to win in the Big Ten, and then you also want to think about competing nationally. I think it's Dusty, his ability to raise money and figure out how he's going to get the talent, the money to acquire the talent to want to come to Michigan. There still is recruiting, there still is relationships in college athletics, but you got to have the money to get the best talent and keep the best talent. So I think that's right now, Dusty, in my mind, Dusty's most trying challenge.
What is it about former IU basketball managers? Dusty, Joe Pasternak, Mike Schrage. I don't know if they were all on staff at the same time you were a player. I think they might have been right before you, but they were all managers together. All ended up being Division I head coaches. What in the world is that about? Because that's a very rare thing for a manager to become a Division I head coach.
Well, Dusty and Joe Pasternak were there. I just missed Mike Schrage, but
Okay.
I think when you're a manager, there's, I guess, three kinds of managers, but the first one is the manager that wants to ultimately become a coach.
Right.
And I knew that from the get-go that Dusty wanted to be a coach. and Joe Pasternak as well. That's why they were there at Indiana. Joe came from Louisiana to be a manager at Indiana. Dusty stopped playing college basketball to be a manager at Indiana. That speaks volumes in it itself. But you could always tell that those two, especially Joe and Dusty, were very driven, always trying to find that edge, that step. They didn't have they weren't afforded the luxury to, be a Power Five player or an NBA player. They had to take a different route, and so you could tell those guys were driven. I think, the other part is just like myself as a player. They knew that if you come and work for Bob Knight, come and play for Bob Knight, that he's going to help you in your next career. I mean, that was one of the main selling points, that Bob Knight has connections. He's going to help you. If you want to, whatever field you want to go into after you're done at Indiana, Bob Knight's going to help you with your next job. And I think it rang true for Dusty for a long time, and certainly Joe Pasternak as well. And I'm still riding those coattails a little bit.
Yeah, I know. I interviewed Joe a few years ago, and I asked him why he came to IU from Louisiana, and he gave me a two-word answer: Bob Knight. I mean, that was it.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned television. Are you going to do that again this year on BTN?
Well, if they ask me, I'll certainly be happy to do it. Right now, like we talked about off air, I'm in the insurance business and really enjoying being a dad and a husband for a little bit. I really appreciate the time that I have now, and I can also appreciate the lifestyle outside of coaching. Still plenty of work to do, but it's just different kind of work. When you go home at 7 p.m., you don't have to worry about your current players. You don't have to worry about recruiting the next bunch. You don't have to worry about parents. You can go home and worry about being a parent yourself and being a husband.
Yeah, no doubt about it. What did you like about television, and what was challenging about it for you?
Well, the challenge is thinking you've got to be to me, the next best Jay Billis, or, for better or for worse, the next Dan Dockich,
Right.
or I mean, you think Bill Raftery, just that next Robbie Hummel. That's the challenge, and you really don't. You just got to kind of be yourself, but just you got to study the craft. I would say what I liked about it is I'm really just staying around the game, seeing old friends, learning new things that are being done in basketball, talking with coaches, learning about more about what their struggles are at all levels, because that's why I got to speak with coaches at all levels, and ultimately seeing how different coaches do things. Because when you're in a program, you really don't get to see what the really in-depth things of what different programs are doing. So able to really learn that there are other great systems out there and systems that are proven to work.
I want to pivot to the Big Ten, the upcoming season here. For first year, we're going to have 18 teams in the conference. Do we make too much of this idea of college athletes traveling like they're going to be traveling? I think it's especially worse for the West Coast teams that are going to have to repeatedly come east. But even IU and the others are going to probably take like a weekend trip where they play two games at like Washington and Oregon and spend a weekend out on the West Coast. Is that really a big deal in this day and age?
Well, I think it's a big deal if you're a coach in a program that values academics. You take a Tom Izzo, or remember when John Beeline was complaining that you get in at 4 a.m. and expected to be at an 8 a.m. class. Well, you can maybe get to that 8 a.m. class. You can get to the 8 a.m. class, but to expect your focus to be there is just not existent.
Right.
So if you're a program that values academics and values your players, trying to teach your players the value of the importance of academics, I think it does matter. You think about a Matt Painter or some of the coaches that do value academics. I think it does matter. That would be the only issue to me. Otherwise, get in at 4 or 5 a.m. and let's sleep till noon and get ready for practice.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned Matt Painter a couple times, and I really feel like Purdue is kind of the headline story going into the season because it's the first year in 3 years that Edie hasn't been like the dominant figure in the conference. How do you see Purdue adapting and changing without him in the center?
Yeah, I think I go back to the Matt Painter. He'll absolutely adjust to his program. That's what he does. He adjusts to his players. He adjusts his program to his players and what to his roster. And I think they'll do just fine. If you remember back when I played, you probably don't, but
I'm
when
older than
Kirk
you,
Haston,
Dane.
my but my junior year, Kirk Haston was our key guy, and he left and to the NBA. In my senior year, you saw different players like myself, like Kyle Hornsby, like Tom Coverdale, and all of us. Our games all changed as a result of not catching the ball. We didn't have to catch the ball and see that Hastings big butt in the post wide open. We could catch and we had different things to think about. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. What it is it just changed the dynamic of the team, and other guys were asked to do different things. So back to Matt Painter, I mean, you're going to see a different Fletcher Lawyer. He'll be able to see some skills that he hasn't otherwise used. Braden Smith, all those guys, you'll see some different things from them. And I think Matt Painter, adjusting how they play will certainly play a big role in it.
Yeah, I think Painter, Guard, Izzo, you've already mentioned them, the culture guys. I think we're long past the days of doubting those guys, aren't we?
I think we are, yeah.
um, you're giving me all the good transitions here. You mentioned the way your game changed as a senior. A guy at Indiana that you coached a few years ago, Trey Galloway. I feel like last year I kept writing over and over about Trey Galloway. Like he did everything but make shots. Like I thought he was exceptional last year. His transition into becoming a facilitator. He's a gritty defender. I like everything about his game, but he struggled as a shooter. That was, in my opinion, that was the biggest change you made in your senior year, was becoming a knockdown 3-point shooter. How hard is that for a guy like Galloway to make that change in 1 year, and how did you do it?
Well, I think what changed is Trace Jackson Davis not being in the program
Yeah,
anymore. Trace just got it seemed like Trey was never taking spot up threes last year. He was moving, he was shooting off the bounce, and what I would tell Trey is, look, you don't take shots off the bounce, don't try threes off the bounce. You take spot up threes, and if it's not a perfect condition, don't shoot, because if you're not, you're just as good when you put the ball on the floor and create a wide open shot for somebody else. And that's what I would have told Trey. And that was a big struggle for him, I thought, is he used to get the year previous, when he shot so well, he was just getting wide open threes, spot up, step in threes.
right.
And last year he did not get many at all. So that was the biggest difference. Hopefully this new guy, Balo or Renew, can get those guys some better looks this year.
Yeah, I think a lot of criticism that the last year's team got is that they didn't take enough threes. I didn't necessarily agree with that. I thought, what, if you're shooting 30% from outside and you got guys making 60% from inside, the math says feed the post, but it's not a popular style of play. What is your take on that? Do you have to play to your strengths, or and if you're going to shoot more threes, do you have to go out and get the guys that can do that?
Well, I think it just the number of quality shots were way down.
Right.
And that can be attributed to a lot of things, but just the number of quality looks were way down, and passing just ultimately in basketball at these levels just aren't as good. We struggle with that my final couple of years at Michigan State, where we were pretty good at maybe moving the ball. We didn't turn it over much, but the pass deliveries, and this is getting into the weeds, but the way these passes were delivered were just hideous. you take guys out of shots with not just the timing of when the pass arrives, but where it arrives. I mean, when you've got guys, you look at it, if you really want to get into the weeds, if you want to do yourself a study, watch the amount of shots made from a catch that is above the chin. And conversely, watch the amount of shots that are made from below the belly button when the pass is made. And I think Indiana was last year really struggled with that, just the amount of good passes and the amount of good looks that they got from three. Hard to tell. Good shooter, bad shooter. Hard to tell when you're not getting quality looks. Again, whether it's from a bad pass or just not enough movement.
Somebody that is a good shooter and has a proven track record is Luke Goody. You obviously are familiar with him from coaching against him at least 1 year. Did you also try to recruit him when you were at Michigan State?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Recruited him at Michigan State. He stiffed us. He went to Illinois. But Luke, great family, unbelievable kid. Really excited he's in Bloomington. It's probably right where he belongs.
Yeah, I know he's excited about that. He's got an IU family. What else do you know about some of the new guys, if anything? Miles Rice, Kanan Carlisle. You mentioned Umar Ballo. Do you have any familiarity with those guys? Did you watch them last year?
Other than statistically, it looks like they've got the three best players from the Pac-12 last year.
Right.
The young guy, Tucker, I don't know too much about. I think Indiana's going to be massive. They're going to be huge. Their size at the wing spots. I was trying to, once I found out you and I were going to talk, I was thinking about, their top eight. They're just, I think the biggest issue will be getting everybody the right amount of playing time. Always a struggle. I think I was thinking about just in programs as a whole. I wonder if money changes that in the good way. Like, look, we're paying you $800,000. Quit complaining about playing time. We'll play when we see fit versus no money.
Right.
I wonder if money changes that. But I just back to Indiana. I think the biggest issue is playing time. I played 10, 11 guys. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing in college basketball. Maybe not in the pros either. I don't know. I just wonder how it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. I know this: Indiana's got the most talent in the league, if not in the country. I just cannot believe the amount of talent and size and athleticism that they have. They've acquired some really good players.
It seems like a near consensus view that just purely based on talent, Indiana is the top team. I think you talked about playing time. Another question a lot of people have is rotations, and do you play Renew and Ballo together? I'd be stunned if they didn't end up starting, but how much minutes are they actually on the floor together? I think that's going to be a big question when you got guys like Mbako, you got guys like Goody that could play that stretch four role. How do you see that aspect of it?
I think if you're going to win a championship, you've got to play. You got to figure out how to make Ballo and Renew work. No question about it. It'll be interesting to see how Mbako works into the fold, and even Goody at the four. I would expect Indiana to make some changes to the offensive philosophy, but I don't know. I really don't. I think part of me just says, gosh, just go out there and, literally just let those guys go out and play. They're that talented. The flip side, I also know that there are some great coaches within the league that just won't let that happen. And you throw into the mix, you got Mick Cronin and Andy Enfield. You got some new coaches coming in that are just studs, and it'd just be interesting to see where Indiana goes once the Renew Ballo combo. Once it's time to sub and how to play, because you got to have kind of two different squads. You have to. You got to be able to compete against the small ball, and there's going to be plenty of small ball. And what really scary is you run into small ball in the NCAA tournament. But I think Indiana has the amount of firepower Indiana has. It might not matter. And that's where part of me says, hey, just roll the ball out and let them go.
Yeah, we've seen in college basketball some success with like a platoon type system with bigs. I think Painter did that with Travion Williams and Edie one year. I think Hurley's done it recently. I do you think, there's so many variables, right? You talk about the money, you talk about, keeping guys happy. Like, can you keep two guys as good as Ballo and Renew are happy playing like just 20 minutes each?
I think so. I think the good news is both players are foul prone, and so they may not be have a choice in the matter. But I think Indiana's history, the last three years, at least, is there's a lot of premium put on getting the bigs the ball, and I don't disagree with that. So I think if you're a big, you certainly pay attention to how Indiana does things offensively. But I also think it's on a guy like Renew and Ballo to make sure you understand that you can't be reckless with the basketball and you can't be reckless with your body. You got to do the things that besides scoring that help you win, which involves getting your teammates going, getting the ball to your teammates where they need it, getting your teammates open, and also rebounding. Is a big part. And like I said, if you want to win a championship, those two got to play. And probably as important, they got to rebound the basketball.
Right. I want to pivot back to your playing career a little bit here. When I mention the September 2000, when you found out that Coach Knight was let go by the university, what pops into your head first?
Well, I think it was heartbreak. For me, it was everything that I wanted to do to that point was the goal of getting to Indiana to play for Bob Knight. And so, young, immature, didn't quite understand things, felt like Bob Knight could do no wrong, and never expected Bob Knight to be fired. So for me, it was like, selfishly, you pulled the rug out from under me. So that's the first thing that came to mind. Second thing that came to mind, I was going to transfer probably to Michigan State. That's where I was probably going. Third thing is just the students rallying
Right.
around Coach Knight. Some good,
Right.
some doing some crazy things, but and then there's just the closeness that I felt with my teammates. Once I decided to come back, just the closeness, the togetherness I felt with my teammates, guys like Haston, Coverdale, Jeffries, Hornsby, Odell, Moye, just that closeness, I think, was really valuable to me.
How would you describe your role in kind of keeping that whole group together?
You know what? I would say very minimal. My role in kind of creating the national outcry of if you fire Coach Knight, will transfer. I played a major role in that. But my role in keeping everybody, I was leaving. And so for guys like Jared Odell, Jared Jeffries, Kirk Haston, Coach Treelor, and Davis, those guys, they played a pivotal role in me coming back. I felt needed. I felt valued. I felt like I was convinced we had a chance to win a championship. And I just felt maybe togetherness that we hadn't had. And I do think that really kind of was the precipice for us. That's a good word, wasn't it? Precipice. That was the precipice for us to
I like
start
it.
building maybe a championship team. Thank you.
And you did that. I mean, 2002, what really stands out to me about that season is that you guys got off to a really bad start. I mean, really bad is relative, right? But it certainly didn't have a championship feel early in the season. What clicked? Like what actually brought that together and you guys coalesced as over the course of the season?
I think one, health was a big reason. We were healthy, but two, we just really were focused, hyper focused on doing our job. We all knew our roles. We all knew our place. We all knew that Jared Jeffries was our go-to guy. Um, we all knew. We all held each other accountable. I mean, there could have been a fight every 10 minutes in practice if guys didn't do what they were supposed to do. So everybody fell in line. Um, like I said, we were healthy. Um, the biggest part was we knew our role, and our coaches, Treelor Davis, those guys, they knew how to make each guy go. They had a pulse on our team like you wouldn't believe. They just knew how to make each guy go. And then, we had a spirit about us, Mike, that I'm sure you can recognize that, man, we were going to fight you. We were going to come and absolutely fight you every day. And guys like Coverdale, myself, even Hornsby, from a country town in Louisiana, he'd rip your head off, in a game. Nice, he's a heart doctor now, nicest guy off the court, but
Right.
Hornsby learned real quick that you better, when you step across that line, it's you're coming to rip someone's head off.
Was there really talk about having Treelor and Davis be like co-head coaches at one point?
Yeah, there was. I give John Treelor credit because he was certainly the older of the two, the more experienced of the two, and I think he had the foresight to see, look, this will last a year. Otherwise, none of us are getting the job. So he was smart enough to say, hey, look, Mike, you take it. I'll help you. And let's see if we can get this thing permanently. That's how I suppose it happened. I knew
Right.
that John kind of stepped back. John Treelor stepped back and said, Mike, you take it. I'm not sure what went on after that, but that would be assumed how it went down.
How tough of a spot was Mike Davis in just stepping in right after Coach Knight? I mean, that's a thankless position for just about anyone to be in.
Yeah, it's virtually impossible, literally impossible. And that's the same for anybody that follows Izzo. Um, Coach K's still around at Duke to help limit the the impact on Shire, but Mike Davis was put in a very difficult spot. I do give our us players credit. Um, we had his back. We had his back privately. We had his back publicly, which I think played a major role in kind of limited the criticism of Mike Davis, because you could criticize him at any point for anything, especially when you follow Bob Knight. Um, we still deal with that at Indiana, kind of
Sure.
the loss. That's not the way Indiana does it. Well, what really means is that's not the way Coach Knight did it. Um, but I think Mike Davis was a young head coach, back then, and some things he'll admit he probably did wrong, but by and large, he handled the big things well, and that's managing a team and managing young, immature dudes that you know that minds are going every which way, and I think Mike Davis did exactly what he needed to do and did a heck of a job doing it.
Did Izzo have nightmares about that Kirk Haston buzzer beater that finally, I think they were undefeated and coming off a national championship in that game? Did he ever bring that up when you were on staff?
He talked about it a lot, and he talked about it from the standpoint that Scott Dunning, who was the cop that you can see kind of come over and grab him to get him away from the crowd, and Izzo kind of brushes him off a little bit. And his Izzo's point was that he wanted to sit there. He's never had the court stormed, and that just must mean that Michigan State's doing some things well if the court's being stormed at their expense. And so I think the way Izzo saw it is it was an honor. But yeah, it was the second time in 2 years that we beat him on a buzzer beater. Lynn Washington beat him the year
That's
before.
right.
But Hastings was bigger. I mean, no
Yeah.
question about it. Hastings was bigger just because of the scenario was just amazing. I mean, he hits it over Zach Randolph. kind of a fall away three. The play was supposed to go to Hornsby. I don't know how Haston ended up with it, but that's Kirk. Kirk makes big shots.
I forgot about the one the year
It's
before with Lynn Washington.
yeah.
If I remember right, AJ Guyton called that a pass that ended up in Lynn's hands, right?
I think AJ hit a couple big shots down the
Yeah,
stretch, but
yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
AJ called it a pass for sure.
Nobody's questioning AJ's ability to knock down shots. Um, you mentioned Coach Knight. I got to ask you. The all the negative stories have been out there and repeated over and over for years. One of the things I want to do is to try to bring out, the positive side, the untold stories of Coach Knight. For either your own personal interactions with him or stories about other people. Is there anything that comes to mind? It's like, man, people need to know this story about Coach Knight and something he did for you or for another player.
Well, I think by and large, Coach Knight was a very um, positive person in practice. You have a few bad days, few bad moments, but very complimentary. I always tell people like very complimentary. His practices were run; they weren't peaceful because you always had that fear of
Right.
screwing up, and I think that was a good thing. Those were really good work conditions. Now you lose to Purdue, things are a little different. You play a bad game, things are a little different, but that's to be expected. I think what people don't understand is just how positive Coach Knight was and complimentary he was in practice. And really, unfortunately, the opinion of most people are that how Coach Knight's very few explosions that he had, uh, be it on TV per year, very few. The explosions are the opinion that people have formed about Coach Knight, and it's just not true. Yeah, there's plenty of things out there plenty of stories, plenty of things that were captured on film that maybe Coach Knight would regret. But by and large, a very complimentary coach. Put it this way: I could name off 10 coaches right now that Coach Knight wouldn't go hold candle to in terms of how nuts those coaches are compared to Coach Knight. It's not close. There are some coaches out there that that are double in the ability to be nuts that Coach Knight was. It's just Coach Knight just he didn't care. He would do it in public as easy as he would do in private, and that's the Coach Knight you want to see.
Yeah, and I think that last point there that he didn't care. I think that maybe is why like the media wasn't his ally because he didn't care what they thought. Certainly, he wasn't trying to be someone that he wasn't. And I think and sometimes he was. I think I forget what the term was that Feinstein used in his book, something like RMK theater or something like that. Like sometimes he was putting on a show and it was for the media and they took it personally, I think. So he wasn't making any friends in the media. And I think they did take it personally and turned on him a little bit, is my personal read on the situation, having kind of grown up in that era myself.
I don't think Coach Knight isn't at fault. I think there's certainly situations where Coach Knight, I'd like to take that one back. Coach
Sure.
Knight made mistakes. Let's be clear about that. On the flip side, I think we've your first question was, give me some things behind the scenes that Coach Knight, what type of person he was, or stories where he helped people. There's just countless and countless, countless where Coach Knight went out of his way, not looking for any media attention, to help people, whether it's just a simple note or whether it's showing up in person to somebody's event or somebody in the hospital. That um, those are the things that are missed, and these stories will come out. And I think that those are the stories that will be told over history of just the impact that Coach Knight had on people's lives. And yeah, those entertaining moments where he's going nuts on the sideline, those will still be there. But I think that the overall feeling and memory amongst most people are the memories where Coach Knight was a great basketball coach and just a great servant to the community.
I know Coach Izzo had a lot of respect for Coach Knight, and I think that went both ways based on some things I've heard Pat Knight say about Coach Izzo. Um, did you maintain a relationship with Coach Knight like after as you got into your coaching career?
I did. I think, with Coach Knight, a lot of times you're not really, hey, Coach, how you? He's just
Right,
got too many things going on, and you usually call him when you need something. And so when I needed
right.
something, I'd get in touch with Coach Knight. But you get where you have a scenario where you're like, look, this guy's still on a pedestal. What This guy is on a pedestal to me. He's like my idol. Why would he want to talk to me? And so those conversations, just building yourself up to have those conversations
Right.
were hard. They were hard, but so it's easier to call when I needed something.
um, Dane, I got to ask you about your 1 year as assistant coach on Mike Woodson's staff. Or I guess just to
It
ask
was 8 months.
there you go. You were one and done. Um,
That's
are
right.
you at peace with the way that all shook out? I mean, can you ever really be at peace? I understand. I went through,
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
go ahead.
I don't think. I don't know if peace is the right word. That's my alma mater. I was really excited to come back. Mistakes were made, and I think a big part is that I have moved on. My family's moved on. Um, there will be hurt. There will be frustration. There will be all those things, but not at the expense of my love and appreciation for um, all the friends, all the support, um, Indiana basketball, all the friends, family that I have related to my time at Indiana. Things will always probably feel a little funny, um, but the flip side is things don't last forever, and I still come to the basketball games when I can. I still root for the football team. Um, did it end well? No, but it's just one piece. It's one person. It's something that I can move on from, and I'm in a better spot. Um, I think my lifestyle, what I want to do as a dad, what I want to do in other parts of my life, I think I'm in a good spot. And what's going on with college athletics right now is a little unnerving. It's very
Right.
unsettling. Um, the money, probably pretty good for people at the level of Indiana, but I'm not sure that it's worth it at this point.
How hard was that for or Coach Woodson? He came from the NBA, you came from Michigan State. Kenya was part of Archie's staff. Yasir was from the outside. Like usually, when a coach takes over, there's some symmetry with the new staff.
Yeah.
He had you, and all four of you guys were coming from different places with different backgrounds. It almost seemed if it was ever gonna happen, where it didn't work out for somebody, which happens all the time in college basketball. It almost seems like that was the scenario.
Yeah, it's a tough concoction right there.
Yeah,
You got three assistants from three different programs, and then a coach from a totally different how do you say, a league, totally
right,
different sport almost. For NBA coaches to come in, it's very difficult to accept or kind of acknowledge that, gosh, the NBA features the best players in the world. This seems like it'd be a little easier, and it's not. It's ultimately a totally different sport from this aspect, the recruiting aspect, the talent aspect. You're getting freshman boys playing against men that are 23 years old, and you come right in, and you've got the COVID senior, the super senior, just the difference between young players and old players. There were massive differences that were going on at that time. So there was a whole litany of things. I was just fortunate to have the ability to coach 10 years with one of the best in the world and be part of a program that's considered and admired around the world as well. and be part of a great culture. And whatever impact I made on some of those Indiana players, hopefully I made an impact. But I still think in the 8 months I was there, I left my mark, good or bad. I felt like I contributed to my program, the program that I love. And I guess the biggest regret would be, just make sure you know what you're getting into. And I think
Sure.
it'd be on both sides. It'd be for both sides. Make sure you know what
Sure.
you're getting into, do your homework, and make sure it's the best situation for you and your program and your family.
Yeah. And I guess along those lines, I mean, I know you've mentioned several times that you're happy with your current situation, being, having time with your family, which I can certainly appreciate. But do you think there's a scenario out there that could be presented where you'd ever consider to go back into coaching?
Mike, it would be a struggle. It really
Yeah.
would be a struggle to get back into college coaching. I might. Um, I worked in the AAU world a little bit for a summer after I was done. I might get into AAU just to get a taste of it. I miss the game. I do. I miss being around basketball minds. I miss being around basketball players. I do miss that aspect, but I'm not afraid of the grind. I grind in my own way now in the insurance business. I don't like. I feel like college basketball is turning a lot of because it's so money financially transactional. It's turning a lot of good coaches kind of shady, and it's bringing in a lot of shade balls. It's a little scary for the environment right now that's going on, because it's just. I mean, when they say it's the Wild West, I mean there's so much fake money, fake numbers, fake offers being thrown around. It's like the mob. It's scary.
Yeah. It's unreal how much things have changed just in the last few years. Keep somebody like me busy, certainly covering it all. That last question for you, Dane, just on a lighter side. Give me your power rankings for former IU basketball players who wore number 11. Top three.
Wow.
Top three.
Zeke, man. I'll go Zeke, Yogi. Um, man, am
Don't
I
do it.
missing any number 11s? I'll go me.
There you go.
Let's be arrogant.
I wasn't going to let you feed Dockage's ego. He can be number 4. We'll put you in number 3. How about that?
I put Jadlow before Dockage. That's for
I
you,
love
Double
it.
D.
Well, that's a fun note to end on, Dane. I really appreciate your time. You were very generous today.
Anytime, Mike. Anytime, man. It's good to
All
talk to
right.
you. Thanks for having
Good,
me.
good to talk to you. For
All right.
Mike Schumann, your host, for Dane Fife, this is East 17th Street. We'll catch you all later.